Welcome, everyone, to another great digital Hollywood session. And we're going to get right into the AI royalty marketplace today with a panel of experts who lead and are associated with some of the leading companies when it comes to licensing, monetization, and revenue share. I'm Peter Csathy, your friendly neighborhood moderator, and I'm the chairman of Creative Media, and we're a business and legal services advisory firm working in the world of media, entertainment, AI very deeply, working with clients across both AI and media and entertainment. And all-star panel, like I said. So what I'm going to do is let's have some brief introductions, and I'll just tee it up with Adam Greenberg. First of all, Adam of the New York Times.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Nice to be here. Yes, I'm Adam Greenberg with the New York Times, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. We focus on a lot of work in the AI licensing landscape, in IP protection, and the bot blocking landscape for the Times, and then just all the different ways we craft deals and work across the landscape with other consumer companies, with tech platforms, and whatnot. Before the Times, I worked for a long time at Google, where I was sort of doing things on the other side of this. I worked a lot on AI search and some of the rollout of those products, as well as a variety of things in the news and content space. So happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, Adam. And I'll ask you, of course, about the fact that you're involved both in litigation on the copyright side and at the same time a major licensing deal with Amazon and I'm sure others as well. And then Dave Davis of Protege.
Hey, Peter, nice to see you again.
Good to
And
see
thanks for
you.
having me. So I'm Chief Content Officer at Protege. Protege is a company that aggregates and licenses data to AI companies to use for training. Our biggest category is actually healthcare, but we work across a number of verticals. Notably, where I spend my time is on video and audio data and related sort of forms of data like motion capture, et cetera. Company is a Series A company. We've raised a bunch of money, most recently from A16Z. And my background, I used to work at movie studios. So I was at Universal, Paramount, and 20th Century Fox. I cared deeply about about these issues and saw an opportunity to enter a space in need of legitimate licensing.
Yeah, very good. And Dave's been in it from the very beginning when it comes to the licensing front. Emi Wayner, with whom I've worked very closely at several times. And Emi, good to see you.
Yeah,
And tell us
good to
about
see
what you're
you.
doing right now. Give us a brief introduction.
Sure. I am a founder and a CEO of Airship Capital, and this is a platform and business services to help athletes to turn their success to real ownership. So it's a real capital ownership platform that you have access to trusted resources and peers as well. So that's what we've been working on. But I am an ex-Googler, same as Adam, and spent over 20 years in tech. The last project with AI was actually with Peter. So I'm looking for on the marketplace idea as well. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. Great to see you again, Emi. And
Great to see
then
you.
Luke Arrigoni from Loti. So, Luke.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Luke. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Loti. We search and find all the bad stuff, including IP and NIL infringements, and remove them online. And then we also run a real-time clearinghouse system for Gen AI companies. We're also a Series A company, and we raise a lot of money through Khosla.
Excellent, Luke. Thanks for joining. And then Mickey Maher of Vermillio. Mickey.
Hey, thanks, Peter. I'm Mickey. I'm Chief Business Officer here at Vermillio. That puts me in charge of both our protection and monitoring business across NIL, content, and media, as well as our licensing business, which encompasses IP licensing, general training data, et cetera. I've spent 20 years in the intersection of tech and media. Prior to Dapper, or prior to Vermillio, I was one of the earliest employees at Dapper Labs, which makes me responsible for NFTs, for better or for worse.
Yes, we remember those times. So anyhow, guys, we have a number of people on the panel. We're going to go fast and furious today because we have a short period of time. Let me set the stage a little bit before we dig right into the overall licensing landscape and different approaches that all your companies take. So setting the stage, we still have a very heavy dose of litigation in the background. Now, from what I see from some of the leading pundits tracking this stuff, we have over 125 lawsuits around the world. And although here in the States, we talk about the US litigation all the time, obviously there's major litigation around the world. So we can't forget the licensing landscape that we need to tackle when it comes to outside of our own borders, because obviously all the content we're talking about is distributed around the world. So I'm curious to get your international takes. Then on the litigation front, you see that you still have the major AI platforms that are using fair use as their primary defense when it comes to this litigation. And just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, Google reiterated its position in a major positioning paper on that front. So that's just background. We're not going to get into the legal aspects of that in this conversation, although we still have one major fair use case on appeal, which is Cadre versus Meta. So for all of those of you who are tracking this stuff, that's the case to track. It's been on appeal now for a long time. But the litigation, the important thing is litigation is forcing both the licensing that we'll talk about, because nobody wants uncertainty, whether it's on the tech platform side, the AI platform side, or on the content side. It's better use of your money to be spending out on licensing of the content rather than on the lawyers and litigating. And in that realm, we have massive settlements that are also being forced by the litigation. So you've seen, obviously, Anthropic in the Bart's case, $1.5 billion settlement, which sounds like a lot for everybody out there. But when you think about what McKinsey just recently reported of $7 trillion of investment, in investment on AI infrastructure, that's a drop in the bucket. So whatever the tech platforms say, it's small numbers. And when we talk about settlements and licensing, I'd like to ask Adam, I'd like to ask you a little bit. I mentioned at the beginning just how the New York Times looks at this licensing world and your approach to licensing, because on one side you have probably the most prominently followed or most closely followed litigations against OpenAI and Microsoft on the copyright infringement side, but at the same time you also have one of the largest licensing deals that's been out there with Amazon. So can you just kind of lay out your approach a little bit at the New York Times and how you see this?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think it's important to point out the Times has had a licensing business for a very long time, right? Licensing isn't new in the AI world. We've been licensing our content to other publishers and other businesses for dozens and dozens of years. And so any work we're doing now in some ways is a continuation of that. Obviously, you're referring to licensing it in an AI space, and then the fact that we do have active litigation in the space. I cannot comment on that litigation itself, of course, but we believe our IP has tremendous value. We're in a moment of change around how our work can be consumed. And we are willing to engage with partners who provide a fair value exchange to us and who, give us the sort of security and a peace of mind that we need around how that work is going to be used. So we are very much open for business from a licensing standpoint. You referred to one deal that we've announced. We engage and talk to many other companies and doing a bunch of things there. What we will not abide by is companies using our content without our consent in ways that we don't approve of, that will then allow them to build competing products or just products that we haven't had a say in. And so that's where we sort of see that balance, but we're very open to discussions and engaging with just about anyone out there.
And your deal on the licensing front with Amazon and with others is multi-layered. So that includes the input of your content for training purposes, but also on the output side. Informing the outputs with the Times great content, correct? Yes?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there's a training component to it. It is for not every single brand of the Times. That Amazon deal specifically is for the news product, for cooking, and the athletic. And so there are things that are not included in there. It includes real-time display of summaries. It includes short excerpts of Times content that can be displayed directly in Amazon's products and services. And then, yes, it is used for training. There are product development or integration components to it that we like to find ways to work in. And then we have a pretty comprehensive relationship with Amazon. We use AWS. We have an Amazon Music relationship. So there's just a lot of components there in addition to this specific Gen AI deal.
Since I have you in front of me, I'm going to ask this question in terms of just the time, because you're the content expert on this panel. And so how does the Times approach a deal, whether it's with Amazon or anybody else on the licensing front? How do you value your content? Just give us as much insight as you can of your perspectives going into a transaction like that.
I mean, every deal is different. Every platform or buyer is different, right? And so I think one way that I always talk about this is if a company is selling access to an API, they charge a different amount based on how that API is going to be accessed and used and the amount of times it's going to be used. And so we think a lot about that, right? Where will our content be used? How will it be used? Is it competitive? Is it not competitive? How many consumers will see it? Is it for just consumer end products? Will it go into a B2B developer product that other developers can build on top of, right? Which is something that we think a lot about. And then it's like the frequency. What does the product integration look like if there is one? How much can we have our brand be at the front and center of what is happening there? What control do we have over where our content is then used or accessed once it's in? I mean, I assume we're talking about an AI system here. So there's a lot of factors there that go into it. No platform, no partner is one and the same. But we care a lot about a fair value exchange, understanding how content is going to be used, and to every degree possible, ensuring that our brand and the unique nature of our content can really shine.
In a blank slate world where we're still so early in this licensing game, how do you approach pricing of your content? And what kind of insights can you give us about that? How you value with precision, as much precision as possible on the content pricing front?
Yeah, I mean, some of it comes down to how it is going to be used, how frequently it's going to be used, and where it's going to be used, right? So and that is not just an AI philosophy. That is a licensing philosophy that the Times has had for a long time. If we are licensing our content, which we've done, to a small newspaper in Brazil, it's going to cost less than if it's, I don't know, and I don't even know if this deal exists, but if it's someone like USA Today or something like that, right? So it very much depends on how it's going to be used and who is using it. Now, there are sort of basic thresholds that we need to meet. We are not interested in engaging in every single opportunity that comes our way. There has to be real value there. Our business is still first and foremost about driving direct relationships with users and readers who will come to our site, engage with us, and ultimately subscribe to one or all of our products. And so everything we do keeps that in mind. Of course, we do license. We have other business models that support that. But we also really want to ensure that we are not cannibalizing that business when we engage.
When it comes to licensing deals, usually as industries evolve, then you start getting into precedent, right, on the pricing front and approaches. Does the Times rely upon precedent?
We do, but again, it really comes down to who is buying and how is it going to be used. And so the precedent just changes for everyone. We're in a world now where there are all these new ideas around pricing with marketplaces and pay-per-use. I'm sure we might get into some of that stuff. And I think the pricing on all of that has not been settled yet. So there may be some precedent setting there. We are not engaged in those right now, but we follow them closely. But I think that we don't really, precedent matters, but every partner is different. And so if people want access to the Times, we're going to engage one-off with each partner in the way that makes sense.
Okay, so Dave, I want to get into that, the evolving, everybody, I'm going to ask you about your individual approaches as a company. But Dave, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and so you've seen the evolution of terms, economics, pricing. So whether there is precedent, can you give us a little guided tour of what you've seen in terms of just how pricing is developed in this world of AI content licensing, and where it began. Is the precedent public? Going from text, video, images. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
give it to you. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to focus mostly on video because that's what I've
And
been
by the way, I
focused.
want to say one thing because you have a
Yeah.
big announcement today.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure you get a chance to say it. So you have breaking news today
We
with Protege. So
we do. So we're really proud to we signed Daily Motion as a partner of ours. So they have millions of hours of content. It's a rich data source. So very exciting for us.
excellent.
And really global and multi-language and all these wonderful things. Okay, so talking about history of pricing in AI. Going back, and I won't be too professorial about this, but going back to like 2023, when we were trying to set pricing at the original company that I was with, Calliope Networks, there was no pricing, and so we literally had to go make it up. And we did a bunch of math. There was pricing with text. There was, there used to be there was a sort of an expression, a billion for a million, which was a billion tokens for $1 million. And we kind of did some math and tried to back into something for video. And we came up, at the end of that with like $6 per minute. $6 per minute. We published that. I think Variety or somebody picked that up. And we knew that that was a little bit of an invention, and the market was going to ultimately have to determine it. In parallel, there were some parties that dumped a huge volume of content at very low prices. They had big catalogs, and they, so they really, took pricing in a very different direction. And ultimately, I think we're now for like baseline video for a TV show or movies or whatever. You are starting to see a bit of an equilibrium on pricing. Again, very very much variable on how rare it is and how high quality it is. But call it $1.50, $2 a minute, something like that. Again, with lots of variables in that. But that is in a context still, I think, where the biggest competitor is free content. So, a lot of AI buyers, their decision, whether they're going to say this, to us or not, and they're certainly not going to say this publicly, but they must be in the background deciding, okay, we can license this, in which case we get it legally cleared. That's great. We get it, packaged up really nicely for us. We don't have to go find it. And that's worth something. But still, we could, it's a build or buy decision, and if we do it ourselves, we can, in many cases, we can go scrape it and take it. So I think that has put a real ceiling on pricing because there is that context. One thing that I'll add, and this might be a little bit of this is probably my theme, of the week or month or quarter. The requests from the AI buyers for video and audio are getting so much more complex that we are leaving the world where content can be easily scraped. So that is we're in the early phases of sort of
what do you mean
resetting.
by that? We're leaving the world where content can
So,
easily be scraped.
so
Are
one
you talking about
example.
quality content behind paywalls?
No, I mean we're being asked for things that are much more specific and complicated. So, for example, a lot of our customers now are building 3D world models. They need assets like multi-camera video. They want two or three cameras from different angles so they can do things in 3D. You can't find that online at any kind of scale to be able to scrape it. So now we're in that puts us into a different world. There are still embedded expectations of what content costs from buyers. So it's not like Protege can snap our fingers and say, okay, instead of $2 a minute, we're going to charge $1 million a minute. There will still be push and pull, but it is a little bit of a new dynamic, which I think is exciting and interesting.
Okay, so prices have definitely significantly come down, it sounds like, generally when it comes to video content and textual content too, because when we were talking, same time a couple of years ago, it was, depending on what the quality of the content was, it was more like the $5, $6 per minute. That was what people were chattering, and you guys did kind of set the tone there.
Yeah, it was there for a minute, but I'll say then when the big archives came in and dumped content, it crashed.
Yeah.
So it is, I'd actually say over the last year, it's actually been pushing up.
Okay, very good. And I want to throw it out to Mickey, Luke, and Emi, if you have any context there, just in terms of what you've seen in terms of the economics of content licensing. And, as you answer the question, feel free to mention how you guys play in that overall licensing space. And then we'll get into more of the details of how these licenses are structured.
I think Dave really touched on it, which is there's a ton of uncertainty, right? And you have companies like Protege that are helping, determine what I guess what the market conditions are for, like what people ask for and how they pay. And I think we have a similar philosophy in terms of we aren't competitive with how Protege does things. Like that's all how you build the model. But once something comes out, that's what Loti is really concerned with. So if someone were to build that 3D model and then put a famous person inside of it, they would use our system in real time to determine if they could do that, if the context of that celebrity was allowed there, right? Like if this didn't violate any deals they had or it aligned with their politics, and then what the price would be. And so our
Can
philosophy
I ask
is,
you a question about that?
yeah,
Is it also does your solution also just check to see whether there's a likeness of somebody, substantially an output tracks a likeness or a voice of
yes,
somebody who's a celebrity or somebody, an
yeah.
individual who's identifiable?
And so it's probably not as big of a thing on this panel, but I'll briefly mention the whole thesis we have is that licensing is actually kind of this emergent property of defense, which is I can tell you when you shouldn't be doing something, right? So a model accidentally creates a famous person, I can tell you, oh, that shouldn't be that way. Or if you use the latent space attack where you describe there's a man on an island and he befriends a volleyball, right? Most models will generate that celebrity accurately. And so we could actually say, oh, we've caught that. That is someone, and we have the rules for that person and the pricing for it. So defense is actually a core aspect of licensing. Without it, it's just a toll booth that people can optionally pay for. So we go out the internet, we do find those things. And then, of course, when models go to make it, at the point it's generated, we can identify it and say, actually, that person is someone that's protected and they do have rules. So we do both. Yes,
But you don't do the licensing itself. Is
we
that
do.
correct? Oh,
Yes.
you
So
do.
it's
You
really,
also do the
yes,
licensing.
the licensing portion is done in real time. So our clients basically put all the rules in around their politics and their endorsements, what they want around violence or not, or sexual content or anything along those lines. Of course, everyone has that off, but you get the idea, right? And then there's pricing associated with it by the minute or per image or for audio. And so if you
Okay.
are using a Gen AI platform, we just clear it within 300 milliseconds.
Okay, so it sounds like your clients are the content or the individuals and the content owners themselves. And then because you can track and then you can also then do this licensing that you talk about.
Correct. So we have two different
Okay.
customers. We have celebrities and we have Gen AI platforms.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
our
So
economics, yeah, go ahead.
no, and there's a company that's related but doesn't do the licensing front, as I understand what you do. Copysite.ai. There's another one that I've
Yes,
heard
yeah.
of that does a little bit of the tracking. Okay, very
Yes.
good. And I'll ask you, Mickey, to kind of your thoughts about the evolution of the economics of the space and how Vermillio plays in this world.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is we agree with Luke. You need great defense before you can start to play offense and actually monetize your assets. If your assets or your IP is out there for free or being used for free, why would anyone else want to pay for them? So you need to lock it down and ensure whether it's your NIL, your video content, et cetera, isn't being used, especially in outputs for free. So where we sit in the market is we came out with protection technology, which can also be transferred into securing licensing deals. So in licensing deals, we have products that third-party guardrails for character NIL or IP licensing. And then we also do the auditing, attribution, and tracking of these licensing deals to ensure that whatever guardrails are put in place are being met on the back end or in the outputs. This has led us, due to market demand,
Do you
into
Mickey? Do you actually do the licensing
yes.
then?
So
Okay, you do.
based on market demand, we're providing the technology. Our customers are saying, "Hey, can you help us do the licensing deal? So that led us to building a marketplace for mostly video content, music, and well-known talent and NIL. But I do want to comment on something Dave said earlier. What we're seeing is the in mass generic licensing of video has slowed down considerably, and the price has come down a lot in terms of just generic video for training. However, to Dave's point, pricing for premium content has come way up. However, the issue with that is I think the deals themselves are much smaller because the premium content deals, these are just gap fillers, polishing, much less content than we're used to seeing.
Fine tuning, would you still? Yeah.
Fine tuning is the word. So a lot of these models are just fine tuning now, and they'll pay a premium per hour, a premium per minute to fine tune, but the overall amount or scale they're buying has decreased considerably from our viewpoint.
Okay, so Mickey, can you talk about the pricing with more specifics in terms of what it is today, as much as possible, since you see things at scale?
I mean, I talk in hourly rates. Dave talks a minute. We can do the math. But when we first started licensing video content at scale, you could probably get something like $250 an hour. Generic video licensing today is probably south of $100 an hour.
Wow.
However, premium content, I think you could probably see north of that 250, depending on what it is and how much of it you have. So,
okay.
The generic,
and that's for video content.
That's for video. Yeah.
How about, can you give some sense on the music side, since you play in that world too?
Well, the music side, licensing for music and for NIL talent is a lot different. It's more on the output, the IP used in the output, et cetera. So those deals are more structured as residual downstream revenue, et cetera, or they hope to be structured that way. I don't know if the market's fully there yet, where it's mature enough where we're getting the right residuals, we're getting the right downstreams for these IP owners. But that's the way the world looks at for, I would say, music, talent, and NIL.
Can you give a little bit more specificity on what you mean by residual, just so everybody out there listening and watching kind of understands that more?
Yeah, if I own the character Batman, and Batman, someone prompts a model to create something, and then Batman ends up in the output, we can say how much of that output contains Batman IP, and then based on whatever values associated with that output, the studio or the owner of that IP would get a percentage of revenue for whatever values associated with that output.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so it's a ongoing. It's almost like a royalty, a streaming royalty, where there's a percentage that's negotiated.
The residual is a royalty. Yes.
Are you seeing some kind of, we're getting closer to what that number is on the residual side or on the royalty side?
I mean, I think it's more mature in music, yes. But where there's a big play is with like movie studios or like character ownership, NIL, talent that has NIL. So, like for example, are we getting closer? Well, you get something like Sora 2 that launched. Disney did a deal that has rumored to incorporate some of those commercial aspects into it, and then Sora 2 goes away. That deal blows up. Then you have Meta, who launched Muse. They weren't paying for use of any of that. There was an uproar. They killed Muse. So we're getting stepping stones towards it, and we're seeing more market demand from, say, movie studios to do these types of deals. But I think on the AI model side, the commercial aspects, the commercial models aren't quite figured out, so it's tough to get deals done.
Okay, so sorry, I want to drill down even further a little bit. And anybody who has some input on this, and Emi, I'm going to get into what you're involved in, it sounds like a lot of on the individual front. But Mickey, since we're talking about this, so if a studio has a Batman
Sure.
and they're willing to enter into an AI deal where they get an ongoing percentage of dollars that are generated with the use of their content. Somebody does an input, I'm a user, and I want to use Batman in something like Disney was going to do with Sora, as as we talked about.
That's it.
What can they expect roughly from what that percentage would be of every dollar? The studio, what would they expect?
I don't know. I mean, I'll turn the question back on you. So
Yeah.
Batman's an example, right?
Mhm.
Spencer Pratt, who ran for mayor of LA, had a bunch of AI generated campaign videos, and they leveraged Batman, a lot of them in some aspect, right? How much is the consumer willing to pay for that? How much was Spencer Pratt willing to pay for that output? Those things are not defined yet.
Okay. Okay.
So the willingness for the consumer to pay, the value associated to it by the AI models, the AI labs, I don't think that's all kind of
It's forming now.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
forming.
it's forming, but we don't know what it is yet. So what expectations the studios have, it's kind of all over the place. But I think both sides need to mature a little bit for those deals to be really scaled out. But we're getting closer to that.
Yeah.
Set some
I
of
think
the standard, et cetera.
Okay, one thing I want to throw out just for everybody out there too, and I think this is important framing, is when we're talking about music and video, there's all these copyright issues that are associated with it. When we're talking about individual celebrities and name, image, likeness, and biometrics, that falls outside of copyright. That is something completely different. That's a different legal landscape. But when as Mickey was saying, at least on the music side and the individual side, we're not talking about training that's being respected so far from the tech platforms. It's more on the output side. Whereas on video, it sounds like from what Dave was saying that there is more of a continued willingness to pay for using the content on training. But Emi, tell me if that's right, that you primarily play in the individual space, so outside of copyright, and if you can tell me a little bit about how you play in that world and also what you're seeing in terms of the economics that I was just discussing with Mickey.
That's just like Mickey said, the consumer side, it's not defined yet, and I still see that happening. And when we were working together, Peter, and we thought about different models and different philosophy, there are a lot of things that we should think about. And no one has a clear answer yet, but I think we have a really good models and ideas that we can form the opinions. It's just a matter of who's going to go first and then set the standard, kind of like Dave mentioned, that who's going to set the price for 60 minutes, who's going to set the price for this likeness, and then we will see that more. But as of today, I don't see that yet.
Has anybody who's on the panel, have you seen or do you have any ideas of where things seem to be heading when we're talking about, let's talk about individuals, so outside of copyright?
Yeah, I do want to mention one thing that kind of dovetails in this question, which is I think the question itself of how much can studios expect or how much can we make from this might be the wrong question to ask. For example, if I asked anyone on this panel, how much will you sell a single share of Microsoft for, you would all go out to the market and see how much it currently is now. And so, like our philosophy is kind of simple. It's let's create a NASDAQ-like system for NIL and IP. So every moment of the day, we expect that those prices will change, and we've created the mechanism for that real-time system of pricing. So I think in a year or two, we'll have the same question, like, what is it? And we'll just have some metric of like, well, NILs for roughly this percentage of athletes that are this famous, they're about charging this price today because the Olympics are big right now, and everyone's really interested in anything that involves athleticism, right? But the very next day, all the action movies hit, and then all the action stars get higher, and then the athletes kind of dip a little bit. I have a full expectation that the kind of uncertainty we have now will persist, and that only really frameworks that allow that kind of real-time pricing will persist.
So you don't see it like in the music world when we're talking about streaming. Spotify is an example. So no matter how big or small the artist is, they get the same streaming rate.
Yeah, I
You
think
don't
that's gone.
see that. You don't see that happening in the world of individuals.
I think that came at a time where a real-time system wasn't really available. I think the stock market is probably the easiest way to say this is an economic system that works really well and has worked well and will continue to. And I think most people in the music industry, no matter what side they sit on, are a little bit frustrated by that. Like the way you just described it, even like no matter how big you are, you get paid the same price. Even within that statement, you will understand there's kind of an unfairness to it, right? But if maybe 15 years ago, when the streaming systems got really big, there was a mechanism to do a real-time clearing system, we might not have picked that. So yeah, I do have faith that that there will be kind of that economic, and also the other big part is buyers can make decisions now in real time versus like Spotify's like once a month someone decides, am I going to keep the subscription? Right now you go to a platform, you generate a video, you generate a piece of music, and in that very moment you can be given a unique price. Oh, right now this is how much this costs. And so you also have a buying mechanism that aligns up to a more dynamic pricing.
You know,
I
and that I think that's a very important point. And Adam, I want to get to you. But what's very important for everybody to understand out there is that this panel right here is determining, they're helping to define the economics that ultimately will become, or at least approaches the economics, whether they're specific or they become dynamic in the way that you were just describing, Luke, that this panel is defining them in real time. Because just like any industry, none of these economics come from the heavens. You know, somehow they evolve just by business leverage. And so, and then they become precedential and kind of baked into the woodwork. But I think, Luke, what you said is such an important point, is that we didn't have the technology before to do things dynamically in the way that we do today. And I think that's a really important point. But
Can I just
Adam, why
make
don't
like
you,
a can I just make like
go
a
ahead,
half a
Dave.
second point? I think
Yeah.
that's a really important point to land on, and I'll just make a pitch that for media companies and people involved in this ecosystem, I think it's really important to be involved and to be engaged. And there's too many players that have decided this is scary, I'm going to ignore it. And when you ignore it, it all happens around you, and you don't get a seat at the table, and you don't get to drive it. And so anyway, that's my pitch.
No, I think that's really important. And Adam, you know, back to you, the New York Times was very early in as driving this. So, you know, your thoughts about how the Times sees these kind of issues evolving when we're talking about economics, and whatever feedback you can give there, guidance.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot that still needs to be figured out. So we're, I should acknowledge, like all the panelists here, we're coming from sort of different points of view and different type, we're either working for or supporting different types of companies. So I am thinking most about the type of work the Times does, which is, deeply reported text, video, images, interactive graphics, things like that, audio with podcasts. So I just want to point that out. We do have talented reporters, and we need to think about their likeness and whatnot, but I'm thinking a little bit less about that personally today, just to share. So the first point that I would
But do you think, Adam, forget about the individuals on this point, but to your point there, individual reporters like Ezra Klein are becoming personalities in and of
yeah.
themselves, so they do come into play. But let's talk about just content and more copyrightable. Do you think that, how do you see the evolution of economic terms there? And business terms, in general, business terms, but economics.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so when kind of, let's call the modern AI world started, right, with the launch of ChatGPT. I mean, from that point and for a while there, a year, 2 years, even more, there was sort of a mindset that at least text content on the internet was, you didn't need to pay for it. I think most AI companies thought that, it was fair use, and that if something was on the open web, they could use it. And I think we're in a very different world today, especially over the last year and a half, where there is the idea that in order to access high quality content, you do need to acquire it and pay for it in some way. There are sort of the things Cloudflare has done and others have done, and I think just generally the market has moved in that direction. Now, what that payment should look like, is it a flat fee where a model maker or a platform acquires like an entire corpus? Is it a pay per use where they're sort of acquiring access and then pay when they're using something, either at the point of crawl or the point of actually using it? All of those things need to be figured out, and I think that the decision on whether to participate in these different models is going to be very unique to the kind of content creator that a company or an individual is, right? Like someone like us with a subscription model has a very different mindset than maybe a publisher who is going for, who's very wide and open and is primarily funding their operation through ads. And we obviously have a big ads market as well. So I see us continuing to move in a direction where content is paid for. Now, whether that can make up for the revenue that the ad model of the internet provided, I don't know. I think probably not entirely, right? Businesses are going to need to find other ways to drive revenue. But I am encouraged that we are increasingly having these discussions, not just the Times, but everyone, around how to fund these things, because that wasn't the conversation a year or 2 years ago.
Is the Times happy with the licensing deals so far in terms of how they are, how you've benefited from them?
Well, look, we wouldn't undertake deals that we were unhappy about, right? And so,
Well, but you don't know until you enter into them.
Sure, but I think there's like a basic principle where we wouldn't enter into an agreement if we felt it was not worth participating in, both from a kind of the value we get, as well as the experimental nature and what we could learn and all of that. So are we, we are happy.
You're continuing to enter into licensing deals, so that means that so far the early licensing deals have been. You wouldn't be doing that unless to your point.
As I was saying earlier, everyone is different. Every platform is different. Every company you work with is different. So we don't have a shop where you can go and say, okay, I'll buy the Times, and this is the cost, right? Like, these are very bespoke, and we deal with real
understood
custom ways. So we are always looking for new ways to engage with partners and companies to distribute our IP or our products. We do more than just license our content increasingly, I should say, as the time. So we think about ways to partner from a subscription perspective. For example, we did a deal with Delta this spring where we're giving free access to the Times for Wi-Fi users on Delta planes. We're doing a lot more things like that. That's separate from licensing, but it just goes to show that more revenue streams in engaging in new ways is really important to us.
Okay, so I want to ask, and we only have a few minutes, guys, and I'm going to ask you just everybody if there's a specific use case that you think is interesting that may be surprising to people or not surprising. But first, I mentioned at the very beginning of this that we have AI litigation proliferating continuous over 125 cases now. You still have the fair use question unresolved as a matter of law, with the biggest fair use litigation that's been on appeal for a long, long time. So has this proliferation of litigation, has that been sobering to the AI platforms in a sense, like, oh damn, we would rather license now. We're more motivated to license now than we were enter into licenses now than we were before? Or do you see it more like, time has passed the litigation by, we're just going to plow forward with the strategies that we have?
I mean, I think if you go back a couple of years, there's no question the dynamic has changed. 2023, talking to technology companies and venture capitalists and so on, I think there was a view that this is just not going to ever happen. There's not going to be licensing. There was a little licensing in 2023, but that was by far the prevailing view. I think it's shifted quite a bit. I think now you've got investment banks that are when they're forecasting revenues, they're putting in reserves for litigation expense and liability and so on. That's good. Obviously the Anthropic case, I think the Anthropic settlement got people's attention. I think the Kadri opinion doesn't get enough attention, which actually is very
100%.
appropriate.
And we don't have time to get into it, but
Yeah,
100% for people who want to get a roadmap in terms of how to argue the legalities of things, the Kadri judge's legal opinion there is the roadmap.
yeah.
Okay, so does everybody agree that litigation from the content side, the content owner side, is doing the desired trick of obviously they believe, the content providers believe in everything they write, but is it also doing the business trick of getting the platforms to understand that they can't continue to do business in the way of just taking?
I
think
think
it's
there's maybe one
driving.
little.
I think it's just driving their calculus.
Okay.
The calculus is how much can I allocate to litigation? How much do I need to pay for content that I need to round out my model, fine tune my model? Here's the pool of what I'm willing to pay or I can pay. Combination of licensing, combination of litigation, and then they hope it's enough, I would say.
And
Okay.
I think what we'll really see is just what we saw with Muse. Is every AI company is first going to try no guardrails, no rails, no nothing, and then a week later they shut it down. We'll probably see that for the rest of this year and next year. All startups,
Yeah.
big and small alike.
Yeah. Very good. So I'm going to give everybody, this is going to be a lightning round. 1 minute to actually anything that you'd like to give that would be helpful. So it's kind of open ended. If a thought that you have that would be helpful to the audience related to what we're talking about. And I'll start, and it's related to something we've already talked about. I've been always very much tracking the copyright issues, and I feel very strongly that copyright owners need to have they need consent, compensation, and credit for the use of, because I believe that the content is what is a necessary ingredient to give the value to the AI technology itself. Similarly, I think that for an individual, their likeness, their voice is sacrosanct to them, and they should have control over how it's used. That's how I feel. Having said that, I do believe that one use case, the super fandom aspect of generative AI, which is kind of what the Disney case, the Batman example you gave, where if you have the opportunity as a licensor, and it could be a celebrity too, to give your fans, you have the control of whether you participate in this kind of a marketplace. But if you choose to, and you can control how your image and your voice is used, and then you can define the economics yourself. So every time a Batman is used, then the studio defines how that it can be used, like no booze, no violence, whatever, and they charge a price for it. I think that's a really interesting use case because I see that as being incremental and have multiple purposes. So that's my thought. But Emi, how about you?
I think the individual piece is very interesting, and because of the technology, and look, I didn't know you had this trading like algorithm and engineering behind it, that it's accessible. Because when I think about licensing and copywriting, I see immediately big dollar sign. But if that can be accessible through tools for more than just like a top 1% of celebrities, then that would help many creators that I talk to. First of all, they don't know where to go, and then second, if there's a technology available, they will use that. And then third, if there's any economics advisor through technology, then they will use that. So looking forward to seeing that more.
Very good. And Mickey, how about you?
I would say that if I look out into the future, I can even take the New York Times, for example. I think there will be real-time clearing, real-time bidding on content and NIL and IP use. So, for instance, the New York Times will probably have an agent that has the content, an agent marketplace that has the content available for licensing, and all of the AI models that exist at that point will also have their bidding agents that will go out and be looking for content in real time as users are trying to engage with that content on the platform.
Very good. And Dave, and we got to keep it really short. for,
Yep.
yeah.
I'll be quick. So so I love the fandom thing, but in a really different direction. We're seeing a lot of interest in 3D world models and robotics. That is, so from a content owner perspective, everybody's been very focused on generative video and generative audio, things that are, going to create content which might be competitive with what you're doing. Robotics, 3D world models aren't building anything that competes. That's really interesting. They're building, the ability for a model to understand the 3D and physical world so that robots can navigate it and lift up objects and handle machines or whatever. I think that's fascinating. And it's a big opportunity for content owners.
Thanks. And Luke, how about you?
I think pricing, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty. We've talked a lot about that. But if you are an IP or NIL owner, what's not uncertain is how you want your brand used. Anyone that's listening to that falls in that category, you should immediately have someone, whoever owns each brand, try to make rules around how you would allow things to be generated. So in which one of these marketplaces does evolve, you're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, last word here, because everything flows from the creator, the content creator.
I would just say that I think a lot of the time with AI, and really technology generally, there's like this inevitability mindset, I think, especially from platforms like, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen. And so this is what you as a creator or IP holder need to do. And I think we should like not listen to that at all. So everyone here is either working on new business models or new ways to get their content or their, partner or client's content out there, to keep doing that and trying. It is not inevitable. It's in the interest of, I think, technology makers to say something is inevitable, then people can line up behind what they're doing, but it's not. And we have a lot of room to influence where all of this goes.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. What a great panel. I think that was a great discussion. A lot of information. We could keep going, but really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining this, and hope everybody out there gets a lot out of this. And check out all the individual companies and check out the bios from everybody on this panel, because this is a high level one. So thank you very much for joining this Digital Hollywood session.
Thanks.